Now let's find out about the major differences between that we must know. So in the differences between of the chapter, the first difference that you must know is the metalled road and the unmetalled road. And in class 6th geography, if you remember, we've taught you how to actually draw the symbol of a metalled and an unmetalled road. A metalled road in fact made from the coal tar and the cement, whereas an unmetalled road is a muddy road. A metalled road is broad and smooth, whereas an unmetalled road is very narrow and uneven. We can travel on the metal road at any time of the year, that is even during rainy season, whereas traveling on unmetalled road during the rainy season becomes almost impossible. Then metalled road are generally seen in the cities, in the urban areas, and most of the villages, rural areas have the unmetalled road. Quickly draw the symbol yourself of the metalled and the unmetalled road and try and recollect what we taught in class 6. Now, difference between the broad gauge and the narrow gauge railway line. Have you ever observed that some of the railway tracks are huge and some are small, the difference between the two? So that's the broad gauge and the meter gauge. The difference is, when the difference between railway lines width is 1.676 meters, it is a broad gauge railway line. When the difference between the width of the railway lines is 1 meter, that's a meter gauge. Very easy to remember because it says meter. So it is the width, the difference is 1 meter. The broad gauge are generally found in the northern plains because it is very easy to actually lay down the railway track here because of the even land that we have. And the meter gauge is found in the southern peninsula of India. The broad gauge, on the broad gauge, generally the super fast trains run, whereas on the meter gauge, we see the express and the mail trains running. This was the difference between the broad gauge and the meter gauge and the metalled and the unmetalled road. A very big difference here we have to see in the chapter is the west coast ports and the east coast ports. Children, there are so many features of this which you have to remember. First of all, let's pick up the west coast port. The west coast ports, about them, first of all, the Kandla port. Remember, this was developed, the first developed port after independence. This is a tidal port, and here the hinterland, I have told you the meaning of hinterland also. The hinterland are Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh, Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan and Gujarat. Next is Mumbai. The port of the west coast is a natural and is a natural port and has a well sheltered harbour. Next is the subsidiary port here in the west coast ports is the Jawaharlal Nehru port. Kochi, another important port of the west coast, is in fact the 6th major port of India. Remember the number of the major ports in India? Now let's talk about the east coast ports. In the east coast port, the major port is Tuticorin in Tamil Nadu, and it handles cargoes to Sri Lanka and Maldives. Next is Chennai port is the oldest port and has an artificial harbour. I have told you the meaning of harbour also. Visakhapatnam is the deepest and a landlocked port. Next, here we have is that Paradwip port is the one which is meant for iron ore export and import. Next is the Kolkata airport. Kolkata port is a riverine and tidal port. So, you see these are the biggest differences that we experience between the west coast port and the east coast ports of India. Now, I move on to the chapter in the next clipping.